PowerShell scripting, proxy functions. A proxy function is designed to replace and extend, or even, dumb down, a built-in PowerShell command. So essentially what you do is you create a new version of one of the built-in commands. The underlying command still provides the base functionality that it always has, but then you can add to that functionality or, in certain ways, subtract from that functionality. So we're going to walk through a couple of examples. I'll show you how all of this works and give you some ideas for how you might use it in your environment. Here's how we'll do this. I'll start by explaining what proxy functions are. We'll show you how to create a base function. Now this is actually something PowerShell does for you. So what it's essentially going to do is go read whatever function it is you're trying to mirror and create a version of that that you can then modify, which we'll cover. And once you've modified it, I'll show you how to use that function, and I'll kind of share some of the details about accessing the original function that the proxy function is meant to replace, so that you kind of understand all the capabilities and non-capabilities of this feature. As has been the case with many of these nuggets on scripting, I'm going to be working in PowerShell version 3 on a Windows 8 computer, but everything I'm showing you here is also applicable to version 2, so version 2 and later for this nugget. So let's talk about the purpose of a proxy function. It's pretty straightforward. The idea is that you take an existing PowerShell command, it could be a commandlet, a function, whatever, and you kind of write a wrapper around it. Now that wrapper can have a different name so that you extend the functionality of that original command while still letting it do what it always has done, or you can give your proxy function the same name, which means it will kind of replace the original function so that you can modify its functionality while still letting it do what it's always done. I'm going to show you an example of both of those. So what we're going to do, we'll just dive in. It'll become a little obvious as we go. You start in the shell, and I'm going to start, we're going to do two commandlets here. We're going to play around with convert to HTML, and we're going to make a version of that that actually writes directly to a file. So instead of having to convert to HTML, instead of having to do this, get process, convert to HTML, right? When you do that, it just puts the HTML right there in the console. And so to get it to a file, you have to do this. We're going to make a version called export HTML that converts and writes to a file all in one go. So that's the first example we'll do. And the second example we'll do is I'm actually going to take the export CSV commandlet, and if we look at the help for that, help export CSV, I'm going to take away the delimiter parameter. So we're going to pretend that I want to create a version of this that does not allow someone to change the delimiter to something else. So I'm going to actually remove some functionality, and my proxy function is going to be called the same thing. So we need to start by actually producing the proxy function, kind of the wrapper. Now PowerShell will do that for you. It's a couple of commands. The first thing you do is you have to retrieve the metadata for the command. So you do that by running new object, and we're going to get a system.management, and it should autocomplete a lot of this. Automation, command, metadata, and what we're going to do is create it for the command itself. So we're going to get command, convert to HTML, right? It's going to give us our metadata. Then we take that metadata, and we do a system.management.automation.proxy command. Probably should have typed a little more before I started hitting tab. There we go. Proxy command. We're going to access one of its static methods, which is create, and we want it to create based on that metadata that we just got. Now, watch what this does. Spew. It puts it all on the console. So it's probably easy to put this out to a text file. Out file, convert to HTML.ps1. I'm going to do the same thing again right now for my second command, which is export CSV. So if we look at a directory listing, I should have, let's scroll up a bit. There's my export CSV. And don't right click. There's my convert to HTML. So now let's get into the ISE. I'm immediately going to save this as a module. And I'm going to create a new module for this, just so that we can kind of play with it independently. Let's call it proxies. All right, and I'm going to open up those two scripts that I just saved. So the first one was convert to HTML, and the second was export CSV. Now, if you look at these are scripts. They're not actually in functions. So I'm going to do a copy all to the clipboard, function export CSV, and I'm going to paste that in here. Now, it's going to paste it at the wrong indentation level because now it's inside of a function. So I'm going to select all those contents, oops, and just nudge them in one. You'll notice that it puts some comment-based help at the bottom, and that's a legal place for comment-based help. And it's telling me that the forward help target is export CSV. So the end game for this, the reason this is here, is so that if someone asks for help on my export CSV, because I've not included my own help, it'll just pull up the help for the original export CSV. And for right now, I'm going to leave that in place. I'm comfortable with that. But I'm also going to create another function, a second one in here, called export HTML. And we'll go grab those contents in here. And I'm going to also go up and indent those. Okay, we'll save that. And now I can close these. I don't need these anymore. So right now, what I've got is this module called proxies. And if I actually use this, it'll actually work. My export HTML will actually give me the exact same functionality as convert to HTML because that's the command that it's running. So let's look at what it does here. This proxy function actually defines all of the parameters. There's input object, there's property, there's body, there's head. These are all the same parameters that the original convert to HTML command featured. And what it does is so they're all of them. What it does is it spins these things up, creates a wrapped command. It's actually running convert to HTML under the hood, and it's running it with whatever parameters my proxy function was run with. So all it's done is it's created a wrapper around the original. So both of these now will behave exactly the same as their originals. I'm going to start by modifying export CSV. Now that one will be pretty easy. If you remember, I said what I wanted to do was remove the delimiter parameter so that couldn't be used anymore. There's the delimiter parameter. And now it's gone. So when we get into the shell and use this, you'll see how that works. What I want to do with export HTML is a little bit more complicated. I actually want to add a parameter. I want to make this mandatory. Because if you don't actually want to write your HTML to a file, then you should just use the original convert to HTML. If you're planning to export it, well, then you need to provide me with the path. So this is going to be a string. And I want to stay consistent. Let's take a quick look at export CSV. And it lets you specify the path, the file path, using a -path parameter. So I'm going to try and be consistent with that and call this path. You'll notice that the proxy functions parameters wraps all of the variable names in curly brackets. That's just kind of a standard. I could do that. There's no reason for it. There's no need to because my variable name doesn't include any illegal characters. They just kind of designed it to do this as a safety mechanism. I don't need it. So I've got my path there. That means someone can now provide a path. Let's get down into the main body of this. Okay, so I've got kind of a little problem here. And my problem is that all of my parameters are going to be passed to the original convert to HTML. The original convert to HTML doesn't support a path parameter. So if I give it a path parameter, it's going to throw an error because I'm giving it a parameter it doesn't recognize. So I need to get the contents of that. Oops. So I'm saving off the contents of the path parameter into this little internal variable. That's not strictly necessary. It's just a technique I like to use. And now I'm going to go into this PS bound parameters collection. And I'm going to remove the path parameter from it. Now that doesn't really change my ability to access the parameter variable directly, but what it does is it takes it out of this collection so that when I pass my bound parameters to the original convert to HTML, I'm not sending along a path parameter. So this is where I execute the original convert to HTML, and all I'm going to do is pipe the results of that to out file, giving it my file path. And I chose to put that in a little internal variable. For me, the underscore at the beginning of it just sort of says, you know, private use, just a naming convention I came up with. That's not something formal to PowerShell. And as I said, I could choose to use the original path. I kind of like to do it this way. I guess in my head and with some of the other programming languages I've worked with, it's just become a habit. I don't know that I have a strong argument for it. So what's happening here is this wrapped command variable is being set equal to the original convert to HTML. I'm then executing convert to HTML, passing it whatever parameters my proxy function was run with except the path parameter, which I've removed. That's going to produce HTML and put it in the pipeline because it's just running convert to HTML, and then I'm piping it to out file. So I'm just really saving someone a step. All right, so we've got all that in place. We really haven't had to make a lot of changes here, so now we're actually ready to use this. All right, so let's hop down here into the shell. Now, here's what I'm going to do first. Let's just do a get service export HT tab completion. It sees my command. Because I included this in a script module and I saved it under my modules directory, PowerShell is able to find it and automatically load it. Now watch what happens. There's my new path parameter. Now, my suspicion is that that true result is because this command is returning a true value. I bet we can suppress that by piping it to out null in the future. So let's take a look at that. Let's see here. C test.html. See if it worked. I want to open it in Internet Explorer. That's a crazy question. It didn't seem to work. Let's try it this way. Test.html. There it goes. So it worked. It created the HTML, so it ran the convert to, and then it piped it to out file, put it in this file, and there I go. I can still use all the original parameters of convert to HTML. So in addition to path, I could say, let's specify a title, services, report. I can put some pre-content in here. Let's just see what this looks like. Put a little HTML title tag. And, ooh, I closed IE. That was dumb. C test.html. So you'll see here in the tab bar, there's my title, services report, and then there's my H1 services. So I'm still getting all the original functionality of convert to HTML. I've just added a path. And because my proxy command is called export HTML, the original convert to HTML, oops, move my cursor and I can see what I'm doing. The original convert to HTML is still there and still workable. So if I want to use that, I can. All I had to do was add a little bit of extra code to save off my path parameter, remove it from the bound parameters collection, and then just change the way my command was executed. So I'm still relying on all the functionality that was built into the original convert to HTML. And when I executed that, it forced PowerShell to load my proxy's script module. That script module also contains a new export CSV. That's what we did. Let's see if I can use that delimiter parameter. D stands for debug. It's switching back and forth between debug and db, which is actually short for debug. I can't do delimiter. In fact, if I force it to, let's put a pipe. Can't be found. There is no delimiter parameter, idiot. Well, that's because I took it away. I took it away on my proxy to export CSV. So I've actually dumbed down, I've modified the functionality. That does not mean I can't still get to the original export CSV. Now, you'll see here that my export CSV that I'm running is a function, and it's coming from the proxies module. That's the one I created. The underlying one, though, is still in there. It's still accessible in the shell. So, for example, I mean, it'll still work. If I run get process export CSV, and I don't try to use the delimiter parameter, it still works. So the underlying export CSV is still hidden away in there. It's still tucked away. And here's why you don't want to rely on proxy functions as a security thing. For example, let's say you've got some command and you want someone to be able to run it, but you want to take away some of its functionality for security reasons. You want to prevent them from running that. A proxy function alone won't allow you to do that. And I'll show you why. Let's open up a fresh shell. That's the easiest way to demonstrate this. Get command, export CSV. Now this is a fresh shell, so my proxy's script module is not loaded. So there's the original export CSV commandlet. I'm going to import the proxies module and we'll run that again. Now you can see that the export CSV that the shell wants to use is the proxy function that's coming out of my proxies script module. But I can still use a fully qualified name and get that delimiter parameter. So you see what I've done is I've provided the name of the module, and that allows me to access the original command from that module. If you just use the command name, you're going to get the last version of that command that was loaded into the shell. This one gets loaded automatically by PowerShell every time it starts. This one got loaded when I imported my proxies script module. So if I just run export CSV, I'm going to get my proxy function because it was the last one I loaded into the shell. But a knowledgeable person can still get to the original. So that's why this isn't a security boundary. It's more of a convenience boundary. A lot of people will use this to add functionality rather than take it away. Now there is a technique using a constrained endpoint, which is something that we've talked about, where you can load your module into the endpoint, only allow your command to execute, and actually make it very difficult for someone to do this and get to the original underlying command. So you can combine techniques to make this a better security layer. But just be aware that by itself, proxy functions aren't intended as a security feature. They're designed more as a convenience feature. So there you go. You know what proxy functions are, and I showed you how to use PowerShell to actually create the base function. Also showed you how to modify that once you've created it, and then how to load it into the operating system and actually use it. Then you can access the underlying function as well. So you need to understand that this is not necessarily a security feature. It's something that's designed for playing around with the functionality of PowerShell. Definitely useful, as long as you understand its parameters. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.